Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Solutions. I'm your host, Hunter Pettis, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. In today's episode, we'll explore the dynamic world of risk management as it relates to transportation. Like many aspects of modern life, changes in driving and car ownership are set to accelerate from evolutionary to revolutionary. Driver assistance systems from traffic warnings, automatic braking, and lane changing are already in place. We see it in a lot of our cars today. There is potential that a wave of autonomous vehicles could enter our roadways at some point in the future. And the future is probably a lot closer than we think. Digital and wireless technologies, including vehicle telematics, are fueling this revolution. And we'll talk about that a little bit in today's episode. Now, as these high tech trends transform how risk is assessed, there will be many insurance and legal implications. But today's topic will uncover the basics, best practices to help you stay ahead of the curve. So, buckle up and get ready to explore the road ahead as we talk. Let's talk solutions. But before we get too far, I want to introduce you all to today's guest. She's the manager of client care and has been with ARM for just over 10 years. She's fluent in 2 languages. She's a mother of 2, and she is my co-pilot on today's episode. I'd like to welcome you all. Daisy Taruc. Welcome, Daisy.
Thank you, Hunter. It's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure to be here.
It's always a joy to have a conversation with you. Did you like all my car references in the introduction?
I really did. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, so before we really jump in and have a deep dive, I have a tidbit of fun fact, if you will.
Mhm.
So, Daisy, did you know that the first speeding ticket was issued in 1896 in the United Kingdom? There
No.
was a driver, a man by the name of Arthur Leonard. He
Mhm.
was caught driving his car at 8 miles per hour in a 2-mile-per-hour zone. This occurred around the time of what was called the Locomotive Act was in place. So this is where self-propelled vehicles, if they were, the speed limit was set. So you had 4 miles per hour or 6 kilometers in the country roads, and there were 2 mile per hour or 3 kilometers in the city. Like, can you imagine the speed limit being 8 miles? Well,
8?
excuse me, 4 miles per hour now anywhere you go?
No. I no. I think we would all be so frustrated.
We take forever and a day to get to wherever we need to go.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just share that fun fact because as of 2019, some of the most common causes of car accidents, and one of the most common is speeding.
Mm,
That equates to 26% of car accidents across the United
yeah.
States as of 2019. Distracted driving being 9%, driving under the influence 28%, and then driving
Mm,
in hazardous weather conditions is around 17%. Now, I know we all perceive ourselves to be skilled drivers, and we claim to never be distracted driving, never texting and driving or
mhm.
speeding. But when it comes to trips involving church members and students or pathfinders, the utmost caution is of importance.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to start the conversation off by talking about some of the best practices that we like to promote to our clients when it comes to risk management and pre-trip planning. So what do you have to offer in that direction?
Yeah, no, that's it's a really good question, and it's such an important topic to discuss, Hunter, because all I can think about is just young kids piling up inside the car, excited to go somewhere with all of their church buddies, and it's an important topic, and I'm so glad that we're taking this opportunity. By the way, I'm really shocked about the 9% distraction driving. I thought that would have been higher, to be
All
honest.
right.
Yeah, but so what are some good risk management best practices that churches and schools can actually implement. I think one of the first things that we can think about is a vehicle pre-trip inspection process, right? I'm talking about now the church-owned vehicles. Okay, some of the
Mhm.
church-owned vehicles, these vehicles are probably not in use every single day. They may be used once or twice a week, or only there in case it's needed, or for even just a big event. So inspection of this vehicle needs to happen. The driver should perform this visual inspection, just looking for some of the issues that we can run into. I mean, just
Yeah.
by turning on the car, you can read the dashboard. The dashboard at times indicates if there's something that needs attention. The brakes, the tires, the blinkers, the windshield wipers, all of those things should be inspected, and if there is a problem, it needs to be addressed immediately, and especially before.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. I know that, the longer vehicles sit, sometimes people don't even think about just the simple maintenance. So, like you said, when it comes to checking your engine oil, for your own personal vehicle, some people do it consistently. Some, hey, it's been 10,000 miles and I never even thought about it.
Yeah, no,
Same.
that's a good point, because we are our personal vehicles. We follow that manufacturer recommendation of the 60, 90, 30, 60, 90. There's specific things that need to be inspected, changed, when they hit a certain mileage. So that's also actually a really good point, and it's something that church leaders and school administrators should also pay attention to.
Yeah, having that plan in place, I think, is a huge part, especially because one one month, you may have a church member that's consistently checking those inspections when it comes to engine oil or tire rotation. But then, that church member may go to a different church. Now who's in
Yeah,
charge of it? Who's keeping tabs on these things? So it's important to stay on top of that and have a system in place to make sure that you're avoiding hopping into potentially a hazardous vehicle.
that's right. That's right. So I think, that's one of the biggest things that we need to have in place is something that simple, just the pre-inspection of the vehicle prior to a church trip. Again, we
Mhm.
can avoid some accidents, or avoid, a difficult situation by just taking a few minutes walking around the vehicle and ensuring that all is well, at least to the best of our ability.
Yeah. Should we talk about supervision a little bit? So if you're I know we talked about the vehicle in and of itself and making sure that, they're checking up on the maintenance around
Yeah,
that. But if you're going on a trip, some other things that come into play is having the appropriate supervision on that trip. And depending on how many vehicles you have, how many kids you have, how does that come into play?
yeah, supervision is really critical as well. It helps having two adults in a vehicle helps manage a lot of what can occur inside the vehicle. But it matters a lot, because if you leave one driver alone in this vehicle, that driver may face sleepiness. There's going to be some level of fatigue if there's a long road ahead, or there may be a medical need, and that driver just needs the support of another adult in the vehicle in most church outings,
Yeah, I
I
agree.
would say.
I think it ties back into that 9% that we were talking about that
Oh,
genuinely does come as a shock factor that it's only 9%. But when it comes to distracted driving, you have multiple people in the vehicle. We're having conversation. Maybe
yeah.
we're passing food back and forth. There's cell phones chiming. It's like, how do you maintain that focus on the road and
Right.
making sure that you're keeping safe, everyone's safe.
Yeah, the drivers. Their sole focus should be the road ahead. Everything else needs to be managed by another adult. Like you said, there's just so much going on. The second adult can help with directions. The GPS can help manage, behaviors in the back, pass around whatever needs to be passed around. So it matters a lot, it's for that driver to have another adult there that can help him manage everything that's happening inside the vehicle. Drivers can also, get lost. The GPS can go, wonkers, and they make a wrong turn or whatnot. So they need to be able to just focus on what they need to do, and the second adult can assist with managing everything else that's occurring inside the car.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
that speaks volumes to the role that drivers play in promoting safety and ultimately how they can support the organization in maintaining safe practices. So that's huge. One other thing before we get too far in the conversation that I kind of want to talk about is just successful safety initiatives that I think our clients would benefit from hearing about that have led to measurable or immeasurable improvements and mitigation of car accidents.
Mm,
So, one of them, I know we kind of had a sidebar conversation about it recently where we were talking about the TREAD Act. And in that TREAD Act, it talks about some transportation safety improvement. So, the TREAD Act actually mandates that every vehicle sold in the United States since September of 2007 has to be equipped with tire pressure monitoring system.
mm,
So this alerts, I mean, you probably have seen it on your own vehicle. I definitely have seen it on mine where if your tires are getting a little bit low,
mm.
it's alerting you to let you know, hey, you probably should put some air in your tires,
That's
you
right.
know? So that's just one of many automated alert systems that cars are becoming standard with these days. So like mentioned in the intro, it's kind of going from that evolutionary to revolutionary. Things are becoming a more automated. Cars are becoming autonomous. They're kind of taking care of themselves, but that doesn't take us out of the picture. It's
Mhm.
still important for us to stay on top of these things as much as possible. So I thought that that would be an interesting tidbit to share with our clients as well.
No, absolutely. I've gone through that, right? I see my tire pressure has gone down and I'm just like, wow, that's not fun. Do I need to
Yeah.
pay attention to it right now, or can I get to my destination, right? And I'm always inclined to just, go through and make it to the destination, but it's important to, slow down
Hmm.
and proceed with caution, check out what's happening, pull over or whatnot. Yeah, it's sometimes inconvenient, but very important for us to, keep those things in mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a good point. I'd like to shift gears for a second now that we've explored the importance of safety in church-owned vehicles.
Okay.
So, for a second, for the benefit of our listeners, let's
Okay.
focus on private passenger vehicles. Now, I know that that isn't something that we insure, but I think it's something that a lot of our clients use on the day to day in transporting other church members. So while the context may differ slightly, the core principles of safe driving still remain universal. So when it comes to using your own personal vehicle, what are some of the important things people should know about transporting church members in their own
Yeah.
vehicles for events?
Manhunter, that's a great question. It is probably one of our frequently asked questions. And I'm so glad that you brought this up, that you asked. When a volunteer driver, let me back up. When an approved volunteer driver uses a personal vehicle for a church outing, for church business, the volunteer's own auto policy is primary. What do
Mhm.
I mean by primary? That means that if the driver is en route with, passengers, and they're on their way to a church event, and an accident occurs, the driver needs to report that accident to his or her own insurance policy. That's how that
Mhm.
responds. That's primary. You have to report it to your auto insurance policy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. And I don't know if everyone is aware of that. Um, but that's important to know and keep in mind because, like you said, if an accident happens, then hey, my insurance is going to be primary. It's going to respond to any type of
Hmm.
accident.
Hmm.
One thing that I did want to touch on, though, Daisy, and you mentioned and you emphasized was that approved
Yes.
driver. So that, yeah, so I guess it goes without saying that just any volunteer can't drive. So what can we talk elaborate a little bit more on what does that look like in terms of an approved driver?
Ah, yes, I did emphasize that, didn't I? Well, it listen, the driver selection process is crucial, right? It's already a big risk to just be out on the road, and it's a bigger risk, a bigger liability when you're responsible, you're in the care and custody control of passengers in your vehicle driving to a church function, right? All drivers must be properly licensed, and even before that, there is a background screening process. I'm not sure if you want to talk about that a little later on, but there's so much to unpack here. But let's start with that. All drivers should be approved. They should be properly licensed. They should be at minimum age 21. Do you think age 21 is young? I feel like that might be a little young. I paused there
Well,
because
I'm 35 now, so I definitely consider 21 to be young. but uh,
no, but okay, but
but it
Hunter, I need you to go back into your life and think about yourself as a 21-year-old,
yeah,
all right?
yeah.
And the church needs drivers, right? You have the license. They check that, right? They asked you, you meet the minimum age requirement.
Hmm.
How
Yeah.
how do you feel as that 21-year-old being asked
Well,
if you were willing to, be a driver?
yeah, I wouldn't necessarily trust myself at 21 to drive anyone around. I mean, I think I had the confidence. I mean, most of my driving experience at 21 was through video games. So I would I would think that, oh yeah, I got this piece of cake.
Yeah.
But realistically, driving around different church members, a group of church members, I don't think that that would have been the best bet.
Hmm.
I've had minimal experience, actual real world road experience.
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm, I don't even think I owned my own car at 21 officially
Wow.
just yet. So
Yeah. So
asking me to drive around people, yeah,
it's a
yeah,
huge
you bring up a great point.
responsibility for
It is.
a 21-year-old. Listen, at 21, I was I was driving on the 91, getting off of Pierce Street to, go attend La Sierra University, and I would spend my day there, and I would take the same route back. So I was just used to that 30-minute commute, no more than 30 minutes at
Hmm.
21, you know? And and so that's my point here is that at 20, although you meet that age requirement of 21 and you have your license, that's just the bare minimum. Churches and schools need to also look for tolerant and mature volunteers that
Hmm.
that's what we want. That's the type of driver that we want. They 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 have enough experience on the road. They respect traffic rules and can probably handle unexpected situations calmly and safely. That's what we
Yeah.
want. not
Yeah.
me, the 21-year-old trying to get to school, honking, at the red light because the car in front of me is not moving along, right? And so you want to look for, again, bare minimum license, check, 21, check, but you want to look for just tolerant and mature drivers as well.
Yeah. That's a great point. I think is I like to share kind of a story of when I wasn't 21. I was actually a little bit younger, but around the time that I had first got my license, you're under the assumption that because someone has legally allowed me to operate a vehicle that I got this. I can drive.
Hmm.
I'm doing phenomenal. I got this. And I used to tell my parents that when I first got my license, like, I can drive. I'm great. I can do whatever you need me to do when it comes to driving. Parallel park, I got it. Driving a bigger vehicle, driving something that has a trailer on it, I got it. And I used to say that all the time. But the only accident that I ever got into was around that time when I first got my license, and it was one of those things where the light was turning yellow, and we all know that yellow means to speed up.
Hmm.
And I say that jokingly, but
I did the
I
same.
sped up through the sped up through the light to catch it,
Yeah.
and on the other end of the traffic light, someone immediately braked. I still don't know what the reason was why they braked so hard,
Hmm.
but I ended up running into the back of someone, and it was a learning experience for me that I hadn't had that real world enough road experience to say that I was a cautious and trusted driver,
Hmm.
and that's That's an excellent point that you bring up when it comes to selecting drivers and using your best judgment and who you allow to transport
Right.
volunteers to and from your different events.
Right. Right. Hunter, I'm just going to unpack that a little bit more here because I think it's important. The responsibility really rests on, the local church and school to manage and select volunteers for all positions in the ministry, right?
Mhm.
And I encourage churches and schools to adopt a practice that no adult would be considered a volunteer for that role unless they haven't been in unless they've been in the congregation for at least a minimum of 6 months, right? So
Yeah.
I'm just adding
Mhm.
here to the bare minimum, right? I'm going to
Mhm.
raise the bar here a little bit because the church does have some guidance around this, and it's recommended that we know this individual, any individual for any volunteer position in the church. And also, all volunteers should go through a background screening. And this
Mhm.
includes drivers. Those are volunteers that you're, selecting to be drivers. And this just kind of helps mitigate some of that risk, right? It just allows you to make the church and school, it allows them to make a better decision on the persons that they choose to put in these positions because they are going to help support the ministry, and a lot of responsibility is going to rest on their shoulders. So you want trustworthy individuals, and you just want to set the the bar a little higher to ensure that you've done everything you possibly can to have great volunteers. And I think, if anything, the parents would really appreciate that
Yeah.
because they trust
Yeah.
the church, the school, to select the right volunteers, responsible, mature, that can handle, and care for their children while they're out on a church event.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree with that, and I hope that everyone understands the magnitude that presents. I want to come full circle for a second. I know we seem like we're overemphasizing the distracted driving part, and it it happens. Our we have the best of intentions when it comes to getting in our vehicles and getting to our destinations and returning
Mhm.
unscathed. Unfortunately, that isn't always the case. In fact, we sometimes we don't even make it out the parking lot. I've seen I won't say any names, but I've seen a few claims. I've seen a few. I
Yeah.
live here in Nevada, and I I cringe every time I look at my own personal car insurance because
Mm,
it goes up so much
that's right.
from time to time. The same policy that I had in Maryland is three times as much here in Nevada
Wow.
because of the amount of accidents.
Hmm.
And I imagine most of them, kind of like how we quoted earlier, have to do with speeding. Some for obvious reasons, being under the influence. But I think a lot, if you've seen some of the videos and pictures of accidents that happen here in Nevada, I think it has to do with distracted driving. Drivers unintentionally backing into poles, they're striking roof structures, they're running into other cars, and worst case scenario, even a person.
Mm,
And that's heartbreaking
yeah.
when that happens. So in light of being vigilant and having, if you will, environmental awareness of what's going on around us is crucial.
Hmm.
So I'd like for us to offer our clients something that helps them maintain that undivided attention when they're behind the wheel. So I know we kind of briefly talked about it earlier, where it's having two drivers present. Um, but what are maybe are there anything? Is there anything else that we may have missed just when it comes to making sure that they stay focused?
Oh man, I just I want to say this because I feel like we can't say it enough. Put the phone down. I think
Yeah.
we're just I'm gonna harp on that a little bit because we're just so inclined to always reach it. And I think that's, especially when you're traveling with, youth ministries or whatnot with passengers in the vehicle. That's the one thing that comes to mind. And it's only because, it happens to me, I can get distracted with my phone. It's not ringing, it's not binging, it's not doing anything, but there's this, where is it? Like you just need to touch. My, at least for me, my arm just goes out and, I'm driving and my arm, I release the steering wheel and I'm, looking at the road and I'm touching for my phone
For your
for some
phone.
reason. And
Yeah.
I want to share that because that's part of the distractive driving. Anything can really be distracting. So I
Hmm.
think, again, just having that second adult to really help, assist, and remind you, hey, keep your eyes on the road. I got this. Don't worry about it. I think that's very crucial, very important. That driver just needs to have that support, like I said. Other things that we tend to do is, eating in the car, you know, getting the French fries or whatnot, and things start to crumble on you,
Yeah.
or you drop something and you tend to want to pick it up immediately. So those all of those things can really distract you. And it's honestly, what else is a distraction? When you're driving and you get into a new area that you've never been. I don't know if it's happened to you. I mean, I can have both hands on the
All the
steering
time.
wheel and then I'm like, oh, that's nice. That's a nice house.
All the
Oh,
time.
they have a top golf,
Yeah.
right? Just so it's just so much that's unexpected that
Hmm.
it'd be good to just have a co-pilot not sitting right next to you necessarily, but that can just kind of help you maintain your focus when you're on a church activity.
Yeah. I'm definitely guilty of that wandering eyes
Yeah.
in the midst of driving, especially in a new environment.
Right.
I sometimes I do it now. Living in the West Coast, just you get distracted by the mountains in the background or something like that. It's just
Yeah.
it's easy, or even I think we're all also guilty of on the longer drives of driving, and you just kind of go into autopilot, and next thing you know,
Mm,
you come to and oh man, when did I get here? I don't remember passing
yes.
all these things along the way.
Right.
So that goes into being a distracted driver. You're not truly paying attention to the road.
Right.
Earlier we talked to oh go ahead. Yeah,
No,
sure.
I was just also thinking, I think part of being a skilled driver is not only, help you maintain your focus on the road and whatnot, but I think a lot of it also plays with the speed. you can
Hmm.
your foot can actually, increase the speed of the vehicles if you're not paying attention. So even that, can get
Yeah.
out of control if you're an autopilot, or if you're in, just looking at other things that is not in front, what should be the road. And so just popped in my head because that's happened to me as well. All of a sudden you're going 85 and the speed limit's like 50. It's really
Right.
important to also, there's just so much that you have to already do when you're driving on your own, right? There's
Right.
already so many things that you have to make sure you do so that you can get to work safely, or because you have your kids in the back. All of those things apply when you have the church family in the vehicle with you, right? And that sense of
Mhm.
responsibility probably weighs even heavier because
Mhm.
you're responsible to get those kids, to the destination as safely as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What about different weather condition?
Mhm.
So I know, sometimes we're traveling, it may start to rain, or
Yeah.
there's fog, or you know, well, actually, before we talk about that,
Mm.
I did want to add the other tidbit of, I know we talked about initiatives that the transportation administration is looking to include, one of them being the tire pressure monitoring system since 2007.
Mhm.
I don't have exact dates on when some of the other things have been implemented into cars, but I know that we've all maybe begin to see them in newer cars when it comes to like the cruise control. There's some features in cars where they have gauging the cruise control. You may have it set to 70, but the car in front of you is doing 60, so it automatically slows down the car
Mm.
in congruence with the car that's in front of you to allow for braking if that car were to slow down even further, rather than allowing you to just go 70 and smack dab and to the back of that car. That's something that we see. But as far as the distracted driving, or maybe even sleepy driver, I was in a rental car recently and coming from Arizona,
Mhm.
and I'd say every maybe hour, maybe 45 minutes, somewhere in that range, it would say, "Hey, you want to stop for a coffee break?"
They talk to
And it
you?
would show up.
Oh.
Well, not the car. They didn't actually talk to me. I don't think we're there just yet. We're not there just yet. But it showed up on the dash around
Uh,
the tachometer, or showing my speed limit. It's like, hey, do you want to stop for coffee? And I was like, oh, that's so kind of you.
mhm.
I like mine, like a carry on macchiato or something.
Yeah.
But that goes to show that, hey, it's a good practice to stop and and make sure that you're rested and you're paying attention
Yeah.
and you're aware. But yeah, I say that to say, not only is distracted driving and speeding challenges, but we also have distracted driving and speeding. That's in normal conditions. That normal weather conditions, normal being sunny. But
Mhm.
what happens if it's raining outside, or snowing, or fog? I think a lot of the things that we've talked about so far already come into play
Yeah.
with navigating that. I don't know if you had any tidbits to add to that one.
Depending on the weather conditions, there's rain, there's black ice. If you live in the East Coast or, Michigan area, it's a lot of snow. Slow down and provide some space. And it looks like, you know, the best thing is to do is to, give the car ahead of you extra additional space in poor weather conditions, because your vehicle, when you're trying to control it or stop it, it's going to take longer to do what it is being asked to do, if you will, right?
Right.
And you know what I've seen out here in Maryland? I don't recall this in California. They turn on hazards, right? So
Mhm.
when it rains, like if it's a hard rain, people slow down, but they also turn on hazards because it's easier to see the vehicle ahead, right?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
tend to somewhat slow down and, and whatnot. So I think those are all some pieces, best practices that anyone can implement.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I try to slow down. I've definitely been I've used that hazard to, turning on your hazards if the rain is coming down and it's hard to see the car in front of you, or even if it's too foggy out. I think
Yeah.
that's probably a lot more common. And
Listen.
I don't want to nerd out about this. But telematics, part of telematics is some of the things that we've already mentioned.
Mm,
So the tire pressure monitoring system, the coffee break, if you will. But there are a number of insurance providers, and we are working to provide our clients with the same. I think it's safe to say that. As telematics is a dongle, if you will,
mhm,
that you can plug into the computer system of your car. And not only will it track driver habits, but it'll also let you know about some of these things about your car. So, hey, it's been a while since you've checked your oil, Daisy. You probably should, or it's been a while since you've rotated your tires. Maybe, and this system will allow you to, um, it'll notify you about these things, but it also, like I said, it'll also track driver behavior. Are you speeding? Are you braking too hard? Braking too hard can also produce more rapid decline on your tires.
mm,
So you're more prone to braking or even accelerating quickly off the at the traffic light. For all our speed racers out there, that does take wear and tear on your tires and your brakes. So telematics also includes dash cams, which I see
oh,
a lot of
yeah.
people including. So dash
Mhm,
cams are huge, Daisy, huge.
mm,
I was talking to someone recently about a dash cam where they were driving down the highway
mhm.
and someone happened to cut them off
Mm.
and immediately brake,
Oh.
causing them to run into the back of their vehicle.
Oh.
Well, most of us, as we know, if you run into somebody, most of the time, insurance industry, they're going to look at it and say, "Well, that was your fault. You ran into them." But due to the fact that you had a dash cam, you were able to see, well, no, it really wasn't my fault. They swerved into my lane, immediately braked, and tried to make a falsified claim
Mm,
just to get money.
mm,
Long story short, that person ended up receiving fines and also, I believe, going to jail because you're making false claims
mhm,
just to get money. And dash cams, that's just one aspect of how dash cams can be extremely helpful. Is when it comes time for you to report a claim, or uh, it can notify those people. You can use that as evidence to say, hey, this is what actually happened. So,
mhm. Oh, wow.
not getting too deep into to telematics, but
Yeah,
that's again that segue from evolutionary to
yeah,
revolutionary. This is the next wave of the automobile safety uh, sphere, if you will.
yeah.
Is the Until we get to fully autonomous vehicles and they're worrying about all these things for us. These are some of the things that are being put in place so that we can continue to mitigate a lot of the accidents and incidents that we see on the road.
I'm glad we're having this conversation. It's just good for us to talk about it because there's options there that can help, right? Mitigate and that's
Yeah,
what we're
yeah,
here to do is not only look at standard bare minimum, but how else can we raise the bar? And I think that would
yeah,
help.
yeah.
Yeah, that would help, just that
So
whole the safety program of the church. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So I hope this is, as much as this conversation has been enjoyable for us. I hope it's been a phenomenal learning experience for our listeners as well.
Yeah.
Uh, and like you said, there's just so much still to dive into with this with this topic. But unfortunately, we have parameters, so
Oh.
or we have time limits. So before we kind of settle down and slow down and come to the end of our journey and park up on the hillside and watch the sunset. What are some advice that we should probably, well, not really advice, but I guess, for our listeners who are out there looking to enhance their transportation safety programs and they want to prioritize safety within their operations, where where can they get more information? How can they go about having continued conversations?
Right. Well, Hunter, we have many resources on our website, adventistwist.org, and you can find, pre-inspection, pre-trip, planning that will assist, with the safety program of the local church and school. But I also want to make it practical, and this came to mind, and when we select the volunteer driver, we also have to
Mm,
keep in mind that if they're using a church owned vehicle, Hunter, they're not familiar with that vehicle. And so
mm,
I
mhm.
don't know, it just popped in mind and I want to share it because that's also important. It's also part of the safety program. And there's tons of things on our website, but that's something that we also have to keep in mind is that your approved driver, they may not be used to even the church vehicle. So a trial run, a practice of what that vehicle feels like and how it turns and whatnot is important. Something else that they can
Yeah,
add to to their process in that. But yeah, our website has plenty of resources that everyone has access to, and I think those are worth looking into. It's a great way to at least begin implementing this type of safety program at the local churches and schools.
that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I think our communications team does a phenomenal job in providing resources, people around the company offering their insights into just best practices, not just transportation, but, safety officer, all of that.
Yeah.
So I hope,
And
you know,
and it comes in different languages. Did you know that? I'm sure you
really,
did. I don't know because you're probably always on like the English side of the website, but there's
I'm
Spanish, the
usually,
Portuguese, French. But yeah, we have various languages available as well.
yeah, my Spanish is minimal. But uh, as we begin to wrap up today's
Mhm.
episode, we must remember that safety is not just priority,
Mm.
it's a mindset.
Yeah.
It's a mindset. So, for our listeners, whether you're a professional driver, private vehicle owner, we implore you, we encourage you to take the necessary precautions and stay vigilant on the road because it can make all the difference in protecting your ministries and pathfinders and local church members and even yourself.
Mhm.
Daisy, it has been a phenomenal conversation with you. Thank you so much for being a guest on today's episode. And I do ask if you have any last words of wisdom for our audience today.
Don't be overwhelmed. You know, I think it's the right thing to do to think through this process on how to not only implement a safety program for your drivers, but also ways in which you can improve that. But don't be
Mm,
overwhelmed by the process, right? We're doing this to protect everyone that is involved, and you're setting the high standard, and it's not to don't see it as a hassle, right? Don't see it as, oh, this is all of this is going to push our volunteers away. No, no, in reality, you're doing the right thing, but just
yeah,
do one thing at a time. Make subtle improvements or changes as needed to the safety program.
absolutely. That's awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. For our listeners, as ministry leaders, whether your ministry is your church, Pathfinder Club, or even your home,
Mm.
God has given you assets to manage. And that's what our conversation today has been about. And everyone should be good stewards of these resources. And I know today these resources are mostly cars, but at its core, it is the people at the church.
That's right.
And this means making responsible choices on who is operating those vehicles during an outing. Make sure that drivers are using all vehicles, or I should say, making sure that drivers who are using these vehicles are the best candidates for this task. Maybe that means that after you've Finish this episode. Take this opportunity to promote safety and risk management at your church. As Daisy has mentioned, a lot of these resources, if you want to have continued conversation, are on our website. One thing that I don't believe we mentioned is you can always reach out to your account executive as well. They are a wealth of knowledge and a huge, great resource for you as well. We would be really excited about that.
Yes,
Just you having that conversation, taking the right steps to become more responsible and to be dedicated in your pursuit to continue to protect the assets that have been entrusted with you. Again, like we've said, we have info sheets, we have articles, we have videos. All of these are, all of this is to help you on your risk management journey, and you can always reach out to us, and we'll be happy to assist you.
absolutely.
Um, so thank you for listening. I want to thank Daisy for joining me in this conversation,
Thank you, Hunter.
and with that, thank you all again, and we'll see you all next time.